So, guys, joining us this week, it is our great honor, our great pleasure to have director, editor, producer, animator. He does a lot of things, and that's Chris McKay. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Oh, fantastic! Thanks for asking. We're very excited to have you on. Of course, this coming week, you'll be having a film I'm really excited to see, and that is Renfield, starring Nicolas Hoult, Nicolas Cage. I'm not shy about it on the show. I'm a huge Nicolas Cage fan.
Oh,
So
nice.
we're going to get into it because I got to ask you about working with Nicolas Cage. But in general, how you doing? How's everything going?
Good. Did you guys already do the spine number and everything for this episode? I was excited.
We
know what the spine number is.
I don't even know what the spine number is going to be yet. I think it's definitely like 93 or 94. But we'll do like a separate introduction, pre-recorded when we get closer to the time it releases. But yeah,
Right.
it's like spine number 94, I think.
Steven does all of that technical scheduling, lining up everything. Because I guess his mind's better suited towards that. So when that comes around, obviously closer to when Renfield comes out, which is very, very soon. So it's probably crunch time for you. And for
I was trying to act like this was the week of. Now you just ruined the whole illusion.
It's fine.
No, it's okay.
You
guys ruined the illusion, but it's okay. No, it's okay.
That's how movies are.
I got excited about.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm glad that you're literally showing right now that you listen to the podcast by referencing something that we do. So that's a big compliment by itself.
Yeah.
But so yeah, in general, how's everything going?
Good. We just literally finished the movie. I made the final decisions for DI, QC'd the 5.1 and the Atmos, finally got to see it off, which was really great because I got to see it, and I really got to see it at the Hitchcock Theater over at Universal, so that was really awesome. So I'm really, really excited. I can't wait for people to actually be able to see it and hear it and see all the work everybody did on the movie.
Well, I know you're a big Hitchcock fan, so I know that's important to you. I know that's something that was a big influence for you early on. Yeah. And of course, from what I read, the filming ended literally the day that it's going to release this year, like a year later. So all that work a year later, finally getting done. Yeah. It's exciting, man. And with Renfield, it's Universal's been trying to kind of relaunch that kind of monsters universe a little bit. And we had that Lin-Wendell, Invisible Man that was really great. And now this is kind of, in line with that. And I'm just excited to see a new take. I'm always excited to see it because, Dracula is a character that has been reinvented a bunch of times. But now we're not only focusing on that, but we're focusing on his assistant, Renfield, who is always kind of, in many iterations is shafted. He's always put down. And I can't wait to see a comedic version of that really played up. And also, of course, action oriented as well. So,
Kirkman had a really good pitch for what the movie, for having sort of like a cockeyed point of view of a Dracula movie. Seeing, going through the eyes of seeing the world of Dracula through the eyes of his lackey, his henchman. And Renfield's always such a fun, the Dwight Fry in particular interpretation of Renfield, although there's the Tom Waits version, and then there's the Dracula Dead and Loving It version, which are all really fun. But I always like the Dwight Fry Todd Browning movie version of Renfield. That was such a fun, interesting performance. And has some very iconic imagery attached to it. Him in the hold of the Demeter and the looking up at the camera with the laugh, and him crawling towards the maid that collapses. Stuff like that was really, and obviously the bug eating and all that stuff. So to be able to I'm very thankful for to Universal for, like you said, taking a swing at something like this, because obviously like an R-rated, horror, comedy, action, it's not exactly one tone, is not something that, if you sort of look at what the swings that they've done in the past, whether it's The Mummy or Dracula Untold or something like that, where they're taking sort of like a big blockbuster, you know, mass audience swing at this and you know, again, to echo what you just said, Dracula's a character that has, it's Sherlock Holmes, you know, Hamlet, like characters that, you know, there's a million different versions of that you've seen a lot of the same kind of thing, and to allow us to do something that is more offbeat, that takes this point of view where Dracula is not necessarily the main character but the villain, to, you know, he's the bad boss to Renfield, it's boss from hell, to be able to allow us to do that, to be, you know, unconventional in the way that we made this movie. It's really, we're really lucky that they were, you know, I mean, they definitely put budget handcuffs on us in order to be able to do it. We certainly didn't have the budget of The Mummy or Dracula Untold, but they allowed us to make kind of a weird movie. And Kirkman's pitch was really solid, and Ryan's script was really great. And you know, when I read it, I immediately thought of Hoult, who's somebody I really liked, and I had I met him a few years ago, when I was, you know, sort of like, you know, talking about doing Nightwing and stuff like that. So he was one of the actors that I met with, and I always really liked him, and I love the movies that he does and the choices that he makes. You know, doing like Warm Bodies, a completely nonverbal performance, you know, to do Fury Road and be this, you know, kind of insane, you know, desert character, Witness Me, you know, like that to me was, you know, the fact that he's unafraid to do that stuff, and yet at the same time he's got all the charm of you know, Hugh Grant. You know, he's incredibly vulnerable, great actor, incredibly charming, funny, and you know, and things like The Great and stuff like that. So felt really lucky that he was available, because honestly I don't know who else could do the you know, I don't know if we could do the movie of Renfield without Nick Hoult or Nick Cage for that matter either.
Well, yeah, I can't agree more. I thought the castings were spot on, and you know, yeah, it's another interpretation. I just bring it up right because you were bringing up interpretations of Dracula. One that we've talked about on here not too long ago is the Udo Kier Blood of Dracula. I was like, dude, that relationship between the Renfield and and Dracula is an amazing one too. That kind of feel like I would love to see some of that infused in this as well, because that's a more rated R and kind of out there, that I feel like Nicolas Cage would maybe even have watched that film and thought, you know what, I need to tune into some Udo Kier here.
Yeah. Well, he calls himself the California Kinski, Cage does. So that's kind of like his. I don't know if I think that he, you know, credits, you know, sort of gave himself that moniker, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had seen the Udo Kier version of that. He's quite a cinephile, just a really deep knowledge of movies and performances.
Yeah.
Just really.
Yeah, we're gonna talk more Nicolas Cage. I got to talk to you about, because I'm a big fan. But Andrew, as usual, we love. You know, I know we're talking about Renfield right now, but we want to talk more Chris McKay and get people a little bit of background on your beginnings, and of course, you told us you're also into physical media as well. So I think our audience would really like to know some of that information as well. So yeah, Chris, where did it all begin for you? Where did that love of film bloom for you?
Yeah, my parents, my mom and my dad, you know, my mom was a big movie lover and would talk about, she was the first person to probably mention Alfred Hitchcock. Those were movies that she liked as a kid, and had movie experiences going to see Psycho, and other things like that in the movie theater. And so that was something that she talked about a lot, and she and I went to go see movies together, especially when I was really young. You know, seeing movies like Bambi, and that kind of thing, the Disney stuff. You know, I think when I was really young, I got to see like Rocky in a movie theater with her, and I vaguely remember it. But that was something she always dragged me to go see stuff with her. And then my dad was, in typical sort of, you know, dad, the dad movie trope where it's like James Bond movies and Guns of Navarone and things like that. But he was also a guy who collected a lot of movie soundtracks. So and not that he's like a big, like, it's not like he he was a computer science guy, so he wasn't necessarily like a guy who like was in the arts or anything like that, but just he loved James Bond movies and he loved movies, all of that kind of like, thriller mystery stuff that was kind of coming out in those days. And so he bought all of the record soundtracks of those movies. So in our house we had all those things. And so I would, so these movies that I couldn't see when I was young, I got to look at the album covers and the jackets and the artwork and stuff like that. And I think that was something that really inspired me and made me, because again, as a kid, you see these things that your parents or older, cousins or people, people like that are watching, listening to the posters on their walls, stuff like that. And you want to go, you're curious about that stuff and you want to go see that stuff and experience it. And so I got to kind of see some of that stuff through the media that they had around the house and kind of get excited about that. And I started working in a movie theater when I was like 14 or 15 years old, and I grew up in Libertyville, Illinois, and I got to I was a projectionist and ultimately like the manager of the movie theater. And so I got to run the platter system and splice the reels together. And
I did it too. I did the same thing.
Steven, that was.
You're telling my story here, man. I lived in North Carolina. I live in North Carolina. That's the only difference.
So many people have that similar story where they worked in a movie theater, whether it be concessions, ticket takers, ushers,
or a video store,
or something like that. It was something early on in something in the movie world, or adjacent to. Even to this day, a lot of the young employees I see at the movie theaters are younger, teenagers, really.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't get mad at them when they screw up things. They're kids, It's not yell at them because they can't fill out popcorn faster, It's
Steven, were you in what in North Carolina? What town were you in? With the movie?
A small little town between more well-known towns. It's called Kernersville, North Carolina.
Yeah,
it's like between Greensboro and Winston-Salem. And so like our major cities are like Charlotte and Raleigh, and they're like about an hour and a half to 2 hours away from there. So we're like kind of in the middle of the state.
I was at the same distance when I grew up in Libertyville. That's it's basically like 45 minutes from Chicago. We're kind of like between Chicago and Milwaukee. And so when I was a kid and working at the movie theater, I would sometimes drive into Chicago and go see movies. Chicago had at that time they had kind of a Times Square area where they had what would in New York would have been called a grindhouse movie theater, but we're just sort of like, you could see Return of the Living Dead or something like that, and everyone in the audience is probably smoking pot and that kind of thing. But they I was as soon as I had access to a car, I drove to the city to go see any because you'd see these there'd be these movie theaters like the Three Penny and Music Box and stuff like that, and that had we were playing foreign movies and David Lynch movies and Toxic Avenger and things like that, stuff that's a little more off the beaten path, stuff that you wouldn't get in the neighborhood theater like that I worked at, or what was the mall theater that you could go to and see Ghostbusters or whatever was out at the time, Raiders and all that kind of thing. Very, very early on I was like obsessed with movies. I would go to the library all the time and try to read about movies and movie history and look up, you sort of look up the filmmakers of the movies. If you look up at Lucas or Spielberg or something like that, which will lead you to Scorsese or Coppola or Friedkin, or you start to find these these other filmmakers, and eventually lead to Akira Kurosawa and all that kind of thing. And so I would try to see anything that I could possibly get my hands on. And fortunately, at the high school that I went to, there was I was a terrible student in most classes, but I was an honors English student, and I think because I was in honors English, I was able to take a couple of classes. One being a film class where I got to see where the teacher programmed like The Searchers and Dirty Harry and Notorious, the Hitchcock movie, and things like that. So I got to see in Seven Samurai and things like that. So I was really fortunate that they had a teacher that cared about movies in my high school. And we also had a science fiction class where the teacher, we read a lot of science fiction. Ray Bradbury, who is from a suburb not too far away from where I grew up. We read a lot of Ray Bradbury stuff, and he also played Andromeda Strain and things like that in the class. So I got to see a lot of stuff very early. It's not only was I absorbing the stuff that was part of the popular culture at the time, but I got to see things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to see readily. Before this is sort of like, we didn't get like cable and VCRs until later. So this was my way. It was either the library or whatever came on on television, or these opportunities to go see stuff at the off the beaten path movie theater and that kind of thing.
Yeah, one thing that's missing about I think the access. As great as the access to all this film and things that we have these days can be, that kind of like it being a little harder to get to things, I think also created the harder passions for film.
Yeah.
And also, just it sucks that it doesn't seem like a lot. This is the arts in general, but like in schools that we're not seeing a lot of, at least schools around where I grew up, not a lot of film appreciation or any kind of film programs that are like just, basic, to get you, to appreciate all different types of films, or even just learn some rudimentary, camera stuff. And like, I just wish there was a little bit more, brought to that in schools, because we found out during the pandemic that people need the arts. People need that to help with their mental health. Like they need a way to connect, not just, because they couldn't connect with people around them, connecting with forms of entertainment was another way of doing that. And I think that we underappreciate that because we get so much of it around us all the time.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you mentioned how it used to be kind of hard to see things, and that was part of the adventure, going out. It's funny because now that I can't remember the last time I had to wait in line to go see something, that was sold out. Right.
I thought the same thing the other day, because when I used to work at the movie theater, there used to be this anticipation. There used to be a line outside the movie theater, and it was always exciting. And I used to do like midnight shows, early shows. Yeah. Them things were always really exciting. And now that's gone.
Yeah. I remember a lot of that, especially late 90s. I remember specifically waiting in line to see Phantom Menace, Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace. Because there were so many, and it's not like they weren't playing it on every single screen. It's just like everything was always sold out. So you had to get in line. I remember being like early in line and being, it's not so bad. But then closer to the movie time, the line would get longer and longer and longer. Then everybody's, because we didn't have, this was, for those of you listening, we didn't have reserved seating back then. You couldn't pick where you wanted to sit. So basically there was just a mad rush of people pushing into the theater to grab the best seats they can, or any seat they can.
It's part of the experience. I don't know
if they cared about capacity back then.
Yeah, it's part of the but it's part of the experience. That's what. Even though we get some great convenience, but I think convenience can kill the excitement of something too. Like it loses that tangibility of the moment that you're sitting there waiting in line and you're like thinking about what might happen. You're building it up. And I know anticipation can also be a bad thing, especially with all the trailers that come out for things. And like, but I do think it's healthy to get excited and kind of dream up something in your mind, because it sparks the creativity. It sparks, and we've lost that.
Also, you feel the energy when you're in a group of like-minded people who are all in a place for a specific reason, specifically entertainment, whether it be a live sporting event, whether it be, to see a movie or a concert or something like that. That energy, you can't really replicate that anyplace else. Like you can't replicate it at home unless you've got, a very large place with hundreds of
closest
people.
We get to that is film festivals. Like film festivals are about
Yeah. Well, and especially like film festivals that have like a targeted mission. It's one thing to go to like Sundance or something like that, but if it's like Beyond Fest, or if it's like some that sort of thing, it does occur to me that like at the New Beverly here in Los Angeles, that in general there is a line outside the New Beverly when there's which is the theater that Quentin Tarantino bought and programs stuff. So there is sometimes a line there. So there I guess there are moments you can sort of create that. But and I also miss sort of like I remember seeing Sunshine, the Danny Boyle movie, at a theater out in Pasadena. I think I saw it at the little theater there, and there was afterwards. I remember like there was a bunch of people just standing around talking about the movie, just standing out in front of the theater, just just talking about the film, and sort of like debating the ending and the all of the stuff. And and these were all strangers, like people that didn't know each other, and that's kind of a nice. There's something about that I really I really like and hunger for and miss sometimes when that kind of communal experience with a movie,
Yeah, I've done that many a times, even at like concerts. Like, there was one time I went to a concert, and then as we left, it was started to pour, and we walked to the venue. So we had to walk like at least a couple miles to get back to the apartment we were staying at. And it was just pouring down rain. And we were like, and we waited outside. We wanted to see if we could meet the band, and we just waited out in the rain. And that's part of the experience, like it sucked kind of, but like, it's like, you know what, this is worth it. We met the band. They were all, they were great. And then after the excitement, we ran back for a mile, like to get back to the apartment drenched. But it's
North
just part of it.
Carolina's got a good music scene, like a good local music scene. There's a lot of good bands from that area.
Yeah, well, we have Asheville. Asheville, North Carolina is a great music town. That's where we saw that band. And I mean, I used to be in a band. I used to play music. I used to do the thing. This area I'm in, it's not great. I mean, it's got a good arts area, but it's the music scene is not necessarily strong when it comes to your original music. It's maybe strong in cover bands, but But yeah, it's that whole adding the experience upon not just seeing the movie, but the intangibles around it. Whether you're with your friends or your family, or you're just by yourself and you meet new people, is something that I think, I just wish could come back to life just a little bit.
Understandably so. Yeah. I mean, the commute. I mean, that was the one thing people worried about during lockdown, during things like that, just the loss of communal arts. There was a fear of the movie theater experience kind of going away because of just, not having access to it and all of that stuff. But I think it's come back relatively so now. It's forever changed. It's not as, as fervent or as, as big a thing as it was before. Granted, we're still in the early stages of coming back to it. But there's really nothing quite like it. Also, I mean, like you're saying now, Stephen, the stories that you get out of it and the memories that you make can be rather captivating in both positive and, I guess, negative ways. I've seen people get in near fights inside of the movie theater.
Yeah.
Before the movie even starts.
Chris, we both worked at movie theaters. There are great stories we could probably tell about crazy stuff that's happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I've had a drunk guy somehow make his way up to the projection room, come back down,
Whoa.
and then and pass me, and then pee in the trash can and say, "I'm done," and then walk out. Like stuff like that. Like I'm like, where did that guy come from? But I guess he left, so it's okay now. But yeah, just I mean, just there's so many great things that can happen with that. But I do want to get back to you, Chris. I do want to talk. You know, I know your love of film now getting into that whole. Where did that switch happen to where it wasn't just about the love, but getting interested in the filmmaking aspect of it?
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people, you know, my parents had a Super 8 movie camera that they would take on vacations, and so I started to use that to make little, you know, science fiction and horror films. Because you know, it's just like I was obsessed with movies, and you know, reading Fangoria magazine and stuff like that, and you know, just wanting to make my own stuff. And then transition to, I think, mini DV and that kind of thing. You know, once that came around, and that's really when I was able to. I did my first. I edited a lot of movies for other people, like a lot of local filmmakers in Chicago, and then tried my hand at making a feature, which I got into some film festivals, and then kind of from there, and then I'd always like all my jobs post college were all in the film business in some way. When I first got out of college, I worked at a healthcare company in the video division, and I would shoot surgeries and
Wow.
training tapes for doctors and nurses and stuff like that, about how to do certain processes for like continuing education credits for doctors and nurses, and so I did that sort of thing, and then when that company closed their video services division, I took out a loan. I was like 24, 25 years old. I took out a loan with a friend of mine, bought some of the equipment, and started a production and post-production company in Chicago that just did a lot of, you know, corporate stuff during the day, but then would kind of partner with local filmmakers, and so that we could edit their movies kind of off hours and that kind of thing, and was able to do a couple of really neat work with a couple of really interesting filmmakers, a couple of local people. This guy named Jim Sikora in Chicago, who made a couple of really interesting movies. One of them with like David Yao from the Jesus Lizard, and some local actors, and another guy named Mike Gillio, who made a movie called Quick Stop, which played a lot of festivals, and Mike's now a screenwriter in Los Angeles. And I actually hired Mike, and I worked together on the story for the Dungeons and Dragons movie. That's about to come out. I was originally going to direct that before I took the Tomorrow War job, so he and I worked together on that. And then I don't know if you guys know the video company Something Weird.
Video, yeah.
But they were producing movies, and so we worked on worked on editing a John Michael McCarthy movie, which was a lot of fun. So get to work with these other filmmakers, and then kind of like pay for the stuff by doing all these corporate things. It was a very George Romero-esque life that we had. We were doing corporate videos during the day to pay for our weird movies, or doing movies for friends and stuff like that, editing movies for friends at night, and then eventually made my own movie, and then sort of did the film festival route with that, and then from there basically got the job working on Robot Chicken, and started editing on Robot Chicken for the first season. I guess they had lost their editor, and they were just about to start production on the first season of Robot Chicken. It wasn't even called Robot Chicken at the time. It was the Untitled Seth Green Show or something. And I, went up for the job, and they hired me, and I moved from Chicago to Los Angeles, and they gave me 3 weeks to prove myself. And pretty much, I think within a year, I went from being the editor to a director and editor and producer the show, and Matt Seth and also Dino Stamatopoulos, who was doing Moral Oral, because the half the year we were doing Robot Chicken, and the other half of the year we were doing Moral Oral, and so I got to. They were both very generous show creators, and they let me kind of be a part of the directing team and the producing team and stuff like that. And so those are the great learning experience working for both of those shows, and working for Adult Swim, which was a lot of fun. And they gave obviously those guys a lot of freedom to create really interesting shows. And we did that. We did Robot Chicken, we did Moral Oral, and we did Titan Maximum, which was a show that Matt and Seth and Tom Root, who was one of the writers on Robot Chicken, did. And it's a sort of it's a stop motion show, but sort of done like a Voltron giant robot kind of show, sort of a parody of a Voltron kind of thing.
Yeah,
and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know you were primarily doing a lot of editing and stuff like that early on, and so yeah, when you started doing this animation, and started getting into the directing of that, kind of tell people, because obviously you went on to do the Lego, working on the Lego movie, and then directed the Lego Batman movie, and then did the Tomorrow War, which was a live action film.
Right.
So going from that animation directing to a live act, tell people, do you feel like there's a big difference there, or like tell what's the process of directing an animated movie versus directing a live action film?
Yeah, I think that because I had when I came to Robot Chicken, I knew a little bit about animation, and I'd done some very rudimentary stop motion stuff that I would be embarrassed to show anybody if I could even find it. I certainly wouldn't show it to any of the animators at Robot Chicken, because they would lose their minds. But but I'd done some of that stuff on my own, but had a very sort of very surface level understanding of stop motion. But what I did understand was storytelling, as an editor and a guy who had produced, and directed other things, live action things. I understood how to get things done on a low budget, and I understood how to massage the schedule and work the schedule, because we had 13 stages and 15 stages and 13 animators, and you had to coordinate it when the puppets, which is one department, and the sets, which is another department, and when the animators were available and when the lighting team was available, and you had to coordinate all this stuff. And because I had done the good news for me at the time is that stop motion was part animation, but also part live action, in the sense that you had to build or find every single thing that you're going to put in front of the camera, and you were dealing with a physical camera and lenses and things like that, which is all stuff that I understood, and so I could be very helpful in that, and have had an eye for how to get more out of our sets, more out of our puppets, and again, more out of the schedule. We were sort of doing like one episode at a time when I first came on, and then I started to say, hey, let's try to do 4 episodes at a time. Let's try to amortize the stages and things like that. So I brought a real practical, low budget, the kind of thing that I was doing when I was doing music videos, the kind of thing I was doing low end, commercials and things like that, and independent films, trying to figure out how we could get the most out of everything we were doing. So that's sort of what I brought. So what I lacked in maybe in some of the stop motion fundamentals, I understood from a practical how to get a job done thing, and also just from some storytelling stuff. Although Robot Chicken is obviously sketch comedy, so there's not a lot of storytelling. But I understood how it's like how to get something how to get the most out of a set or series of sets based on what sketches were coming up and that kind of thing. Or for Moral Oral, what we were shooting out certain sets and things like that, and you doing multiple episodes at a time. So that was and fortunate that the animators and the team there was kind enough to let me come into their world and help me understand the things I didn't know off the top of my head, didn't have the experience with. So from there, because there was this live action side that I had already done, I learned about animation from working season after season on Robot Chicken, and then I was able to take that experience and go into Lego, which was obviously CG, computer generated animation, but it was meant to be. The reason Chris and Phil hired me was because that they wanted it to feel and look like stop motion. So they wanted to go by stop motion principles. So, and we had done sketches with Lego, and we, you know, when the animators were trying to get the minifigs to do certain things, like if you wanted somebody to reach across their body or something like that, the minifigs are, you know, are you can only be articulated with, you know, they're, you know, they only had certain joints that they can move. So the animators would pop off, and if they wanted the arm to go across the body, they'd pop off the arm, shave down the side of the thing, and then stick it on, you know, with some sticky wax and stick it on here so it could feel like it was grabbing something. And so using those principles, I was, you know, my first job when Chris and Phil hired me, they had lost the green light to the first Lego movie, and not by the way, to be clear, not something that they had done on their own. This, you know, sometimes studios go through these things where they get excited about a project and they get cold feet. And Chris and Phil were about to do 21 Jump Street at the time, so they were about to go to New Orleans and shoot. So they needed a third director to come on. So they hired me. Basically, what my job was to try to get the studio to get back excited about this movie and get the green light back, and to show them. Studio had this opinion that the minifigs design should be more anatomical. So they didn't want to use the Lego design. They wanted to add depth to the mouth and gums and all this stuff, because they thought that they thought that the characters couldn't, audience wouldn't be able to emotionally connect to the characters. So the first thing I did was to have Emmett do an audition for the movie. So I worked with the team, and this is where we started to show how the stop motion principles could work and all that kind of thing. And so we were able to so basically we did a black box theater thing where Emmett comes on and auditions for his role in the movie. And there's some directors off camera who are saying, okay, say the line. Okay, now say it funnier, say it louder, say it quieter, cry, do this. And so Emmett would go through all of this stuff. And that was the way we won the studio over for that they could see, oh yeah, you can get all the emotion you want out of it. We're able to do, because we were doing these things that I had learned from the animators in stop motion, how to get the minifig to actually feel more like he was doing more traditionally what they were worried that this kind of Rankin Bass kind of thing that maybe was going to happen, that this jerky stop motion was just going to look cheap and look bad, and so we're going to show them, no, it's going to look really modern and fun and cool, and you get a lot of expressive stuff out of the face, even the simple designs and stuff like that. So I was able to kind of help get that going, and then also do an animatic that sort of showed how kind of fun the movie could be, how action packed the movie could be, that it wouldn't just be a hand holder movie. There'd be a movie for kids and adults, and it would show a love for Lego, a real obsessive love for Lego, and the physicalness of Lego. That's why we had all the chips and chunks and fingerprints and flaws in there, is because we wanted to show this is what these things feel like. We did a lot of tests on what baking Lego minifigs in the sun to sort of show what sun damage would do to Lego minifigs over time. Yeah. So all of that experience, when I went to go do a live action movie, to go to Tomorrow War after that, I had a lot of experience working now with computer graphics and understanding that. So I understood how to what we could sort of get, being able to work with animators, whether it was stop motion, whether it was in CG, we're able to sort of understand what you can get out of animated alien creatures and that sort of thing. And when you're doing stop motion, when you're doing the Lego movie or Lego Batman, or any of that stuff, you are anything in animation, you are working in story. You're doing storytelling in slow motion, and I think any filmmaker, any live action filmmaker should at some point try to do an animated movie, because it really forces you to pay attention to exactly what you need to get into the movie. What like every because you're literally making every single thing in the scene come to life. You're breathing life into it, and you are trying to jam pack that frame with as much information as possible, because animated movies are so expensive. They oftentimes are no longer than 90 minutes or so. because every minute is $1 million. So you want to jam pack it with as much information as humanly possible to get as much out of your story. And that was a great lesson on trying to just see how much you can get. So when I went to do Tomorrow War or Renfield, that really helped me kind of like be able to understand like how just how much we could get out of a frame, how much we could get out of a scene we were working on.
Yeah, animation's a medium to tell stories. It's also not only just like you said, you're breaking down a story and you're slowing it down and you're really having to pay attention to the details, but also just the style in which the animation can be is something that's ever can be a new discovery. Because just like the Lego movie, I also think about the newest Into the Spider-Verse film that had great animation that was very different and kind of a fresh animation style that really took people by storm. And that's stuff that can continue to happen with that medium that people can keep getting more and more creative and use different ways to make that, because with real life you can only go so far before your people
notice.
I mean, like there's definitely still things in live action we can still experiment with, people still do, but like with animation, you're literally creating everything and you're literally manipulating as much as you want and going as far as you want. So
that's interesting, because that idea you just said, Stephen, goes hand in hand with the concept of Legos. I think the idea of Legos, create anything you want, or you can have, use your imagination to literally building blocks of something. And when you're combining like different properties with different properties, it almost feels like you open yourself up to new possibilities, specifically with Batman, taking the comic book world and the Lego world and combining it into one. It's such a unique twist on it all, really. Now, when it came to doing Lego Batman, were you familiar with, the Batman world and all that kind of stuff in the comic book world? And did that influence, you in the way you wanted to approach how this movie was constructed?
Yeah, I was really lucky to get the Lego Batman movie, because they had sort of asked me to direct the Lego sequel. And Chris and Phil, I think, were going to do Lego Batman in the very like initial conversation. And I was because I was sort of working with them on both. I obviously worked with them closely on the Lego movie, and then as we were developing the Lego sequel and Lego Batman, I was basically going back and forth between both meetings so I could be across all of the movies, in case they were going to, go off and do something else. And Lego 2 as a story wasn't quite where it needed to be, whereas Lego Batman, we had really kind of lashed into what we wanted to do with it, and we had sort of developed some fairly profound, or made profound inroads into what the film was ultimately going to be. So at that point, we went to talk to the studios. We were literally sort of pitching where we were at with both movies, and they basically said, well, Lego 2 is not ready to go. Lego Batman is ready to go. We feel more confident sort of greenlighting Lego Batman, but Chris and Phil now, I think maybe Solo might have come along at that point, or something else had made it so that Chris and Phil weren't necessarily going to be able to direct Lego Batman. And so basically in the room, Warner Brothers said, well, great. Well, we're going to, would you mind directing this movie instead of Lego 2? And I'm a huge comic book fan. I mean, I grew up, Batman's been something that's been a part of my life, whether it's the 1966 version or, I feel, like the Super Friends, or Batman showing up on Scooby-Doo, the Frank Miller Dark Knight, books came out at the exact right time for me to sort of, age up in what I was doing, what I was reading as far as comic books go. And then the Burton movie came out, shortly after that, and the Batman Returns came out a couple years after that. So my So I was at a deep love and knowledge of Batman. And so when I got that chance, I jumped at it. And what I wanted to do was basically say, okay, well, you know, our Batman is all of the Batman. You know, it's George Clooney, and it's Adam West, and it's, you know, Christian Bale, and it's everything, and, you know, it's Ben Affleck, and they've all those experiences happened to this one guy, and he's that felt like the most fun and the most Lego way of doing the movie, and the way you could sort of get. I mean, you know, you know, I don't think there's ever going to be a Batman movie where Batman tries to solve the problem, right? The problem of his loneliness and why he, you know, there's no upside to a studio attacking that, because, you know, it's like if Batman fixes his problem, then there's no more movies. So we actually had, you know, because we were doing it Lego and animated and stuff like that, we actually had you know, we actually had the opportunity to be able to go, okay, Batman we should attack Batman's loneliness and the reasons why he's the way he is, and that kind of thing. And that would seem like the most fun way of doing it, because you could definitely like double down on the rock and roll Batman in the beginning of the movie, and then also get the emotional side of it, you know, with his relationship with Robin and you know, Barbara Gordon and stuff like that.
Yeah, as a big Batman fan myself, just staring off at my Batman comic book collection off screen, you know, it's a movie where it feels like you got away with everything you could possibly do with Batman. Like, it's a cross section of, like you just said, like every version of Batman. I think not only from, you know, the movie world, the television world, but the comic book world as well.
Yeah.
Going through his existentialism and approaching it from both a comedic and serious way,
Yeah.
and satirical as well. And it felt like just the medium itself, you know, the animation world, kind of gave you license to do that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I don't know if it was the studio being like, oh yes, it's animation, so we can tell this version of Batman, you know, being every version of Batman. Because like you just said, I don't know if we would ever get this version of Batman in a live action form, being able to be like every single thing and self-referential and literally, you know, reference back to every single version of Batman that we know in pop culture.
I don't know. We should ask Will Arnett if he wants to do the live action Batman version.
And the thing is, the genius of it as well is that just kind of delivering this Batman to the audience, you already had done in the Lego movie.
Mm-hmm.
So they had already been familiar with this version, and now you're just expanding that even further out and digging deeper into him and expanding his world. And it just must have been fun as heck for you and for, you know, maybe other people who are Batman enthusiasts. I know definitely me watching just all of the references, all the homages, like the whole opening sequence has like his entire rogues gallery, the most well-known
Condiment King
and like Eggman, and just like you know, everybody was in there. And it's like, I never thought I would see Condiment King in a Batman movie, let alone this type of version. And it's like, yes, there was a Condiment King in the comic books at one point. Just like, that's how ridiculous it was. But just like that movie is so unique, and some consider it one of the best Batman movies
it is
ever, because in a way it is, because it is so encompassing of everything that makes Batman Batman, his dark and brooding, his loneliness, his existential stuff, but also pokes fun at some of the more ridiculous things. Just an incredibly brilliant, you know, kind of insightful thing on that version of Batman. And we get so many different versions of him, and just amongst all of them, this one is kind of the most unique approach. So it was always a question I had, whether, you know, if you had taken that directly, you know, personally.
Yeah, you know, well, I was, you know, like there's few movies, right? Because I think I love the Tim Burton movies, and you know, and the Joel Schumacher movies are fun, you know, pop culture curiosities. But there's no Nolan made a movie about Batman. I would the only knock I would say on the Tim Burton movies is those movies aren't necessarily about Batman. They're about Joker. They're about Penguin and Catwoman, which are great, and that's awesome. And the subsequent movies are about, you know, Two-Face and Riddler, and you know, Poison Ivy and Bane and everybody else that shows up. Mr. Freeze. And because again, Mr. Freeze has the best, whatever you say about the ice puns or all that stuff, that Mr. Freeze has the best arc in those Schumacher movies. It's because you care about his tragic situation with his wife, and so those movies are about the villains, and they're about that. Batman doesn't necessarily he doesn't change in those movies. He just sort of exists in those movies. Whereas Nolan made a movie about Batman and Bruce Wayne, and Mask of the Phantasm is about Batman and Bruce Wayne. And that's why I probably like those movies. I probably like those ones the most ultimately, because they are focused on his character and they take that character seriously, or serious enough. I mean, one thing I appreciate about what Nolan did is he did add levity to his relationship with Alfred, Christian Bale and Michael Caine, and Lucian and Morgan Freeman as Fox, like that. There's levity in there, and I always liked that he made the movies they're not serious. It's not some grim, dark, serious thing, but there's moments of levity, and that's appreciated.
I would say even Batman the Animated Series is legendary. I mean, it's something I grew up with. I'm pretty sure many people have, and it took that character incredibly serious, but delivered it to a younger audience in a more serious way. I mean, you just mentioned the Mr. Freeze episode of that series is incredibly emotional.
Yeah.
It gives you everything you need to know about the character of Mr. Freeze, and makes that character more three-dimensional, makes him more sympathetic, dealing with trauma, and then that, I think that kind of also leads down the road of exploring the villains, like we see in a lot of movies now and TV shows, giving them a backstory, giving them reasons why the way they are, getting into the psyche of it all and whatnot. And in Lego Batman, it gets into the psyche of the Joker and the Batman relationship, which is so unique in pop culture and so unique in the comic books as well, where one can't really exist without the other in many ways. They're kind of different sides of the same coin, I should say.
Yeah.
And that's explored so much in and of that. And also, one of the more unique things in kind of the Lego Batman movie is what happens when Gotham has no crime left.
Yeah.
Like, what happens to Batman? His entire identity is that, going after that, seeking something that's never ending, like a problem that has no solution. But he just keeps doing it. And what happens when that problem goes away? And exploring that is something I don't think we see a lot.
No, I mean, just the idea that Batman, we got to sort of attack Batman a little bit for kind of being shitty at his job, where he's a guy who's like, wait a minute, so he's been doing this in Gotham City for how long, and Gotham City's never gets better, and it's in fact it only seems to get worse. I mean, again, if you were to take from 1939. Every comic book storyline, put them one after the other and play that as though that's real. I mean, at a certain point, Gotham City gets blown up by a nuclear weapon, by I can't even I can't remember what the story that's off the top of my head anymore, but it's like it's insane the amount of bad shit that happens to Gotham City, and at a certain point you'd have to go like, wait a minute, Batman, you're actually shitty at your job. So we very used to have Barbara Gordon, talk about Batman, who's karate chopping poor people, and that there's really no upside for Batman to actually fix Gotham City, because it is the thing that he needs, because it's the only thing that he gets this validation from. And
Joker sees him better than he does. He's like, it's one of the things in the Nolan films that he got the line right in there. He's like, look, you're a freak like me. He's like, you're just me. You're just taking a moral high ground that you think you have. And we're just all existing, doing crazy things.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of Alan Moore Killing Joke in there too, and a little bit of Frank Miller. I mean, we were
just one bad day.
Yeah, It's just
But talking about collecting, we do want to talk to you about collecting physical media film. You know, that's what we do here. So please tell us what kind of collection you got going on over there. You got to have we talked to Sean Baker. He has a whole apartment dedicated to his physical media collection. So you have an apartment.
I have several closets full of stuff. I mean, as soon as like VHS, as soon as you could buy VHS, I probably started buying things.
Yeah.
I don't have any of that stuff anymore, but I, would buy the Disney, buy those Disney big clamshell VHSs for my mom and dad for Christmas every year. Buy them a new movie, whatever had come out, Bambi and, Dumbo and everything. And I just like to, if I couldn't, because I like to rewatch stuff. I like to study stuff, so being able to get Heat on VHS or something and be able to watch the, bank robbery scene and that sort of thing, in the double VHS Heat. That was something I'd watch over and over again and study. So, and then I think it also, it's also about, sometimes it's also about the extras, some of my, when it transitioned to DVD and you could get, I remember one of the first commentaries I listened to was Darren Aronofsky talking about Pi and talking about all the things he learned making that movie and the assumptions that he made, on set versus what he saw editorially and stuff like that. And it was like, you just get this masterclass, this filmmaker talking about these things and these anecdotes, or Steven Soderbergh on the Limey disc and talking with the writer Lem Dobbs and talking about their process and that sort of thing. I mean, it was really really that was that was probably really when I got into collecting stuff when DVDs landed, because then I was like, oh shit, there's all of these things, and then there's the filmmakers and the talking and the deleted scenes and the making of all these documentaries that they made for the Hitchcock releases and stuff like that. That was all really exciting and important to me, and then then it became things having to do with like the cover art or the Wong Kar-wai collection that that Criterion did, where it's all some movies that I had never had a chance to see. I saw Chungking Express in the movie theater when I was I guess just post college or something, and then but I didn't get to see his earlier movies, Happy Together and stuff like that. And so to be able to get that collection and watch these movies and kind of program your own sort of film festival of the films and kind of watch them all back to back and see his evolution and that sort of thing. I mean, that's I don't know why. It's probably a question I probably should ask you guys, because it's just like, why do we collect these things? Why do we like these things? What is it about? It's easy. I've got a deep fucking iTunes library too. When I went to Sydney, because doing the Lego movies, I lived in Sydney, Australia for a while. And so I couldn't bring physical media there, and it didn't make sense to buy, even though I did, buy a lot of, Blu-rays and stuff like that when I was there. So I started just, putting, buying movies on iTunes, but nonetheless, I still would prefer when I'm at home, even though it's more convenient maybe to watch a streaming movie, or something I've already got on iTunes. I like pulling out the physical stuff and watching it. And again, I don't know why that is. I don't know why I would have a hard time getting rid of, like, I've got a steel case of The Thing in Blu-ray, but I've also got, a DVD that, that I have, or, and sometimes it's also like, I remember like Roddy Piper came into Robot Chicken, and I had to get my copy of They Live, DVD signed by him, and so that's got his. I can't get rid of that because it's got
no
Roddy Piper's autograph on it. But yeah, why do you guys think that? Like, what is it? What is it? Why do we do this?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with like what you were talking about that additional context that's on there with features. That's one thing. We know that thing's got a lot of knowledge there, where it's about gathering knowledge. Why we choose to pick physical media over maybe like a streaming is because I think for somebody like you, maybe, you have an inside appreciation for what it takes to make these things. And so that convenience factor that people have because they don't have that relationship with movies like we do, or like, we very much study this. We love film, and we really understand that how hard it is to make movies and how hard it is just to get them made. And so I think that appreciation lends itself also to the fact of physical media, because, that extra steps that we take, that extra things that we get with it is part of the experience and of that film, and, kind of memorializing that film in our collection, keeping it in our collection and having a place in it. Of course, these are things they can all disc rot and die one day, but it's like a life on the shelf. And I think it's showing more appreciation for the film, for the filmmakers, the people behind the movie. Yeah. I think that all is the weight behind why we love it, because people might look at it as just taking up space, that it's just, just a thing. And then we're just like, maybe we're hoarders and we just have an impulse. And some of that's in there. Some of that's in there when you're really in it, like we are.
I am literally buried in it right now.
Some of that's there, but I think it's also, it's at the heart of it. There's a love for movies, and there's a love for wanting to feel like there's a little bit of, that you're gathering knowledge. That's how I feel about it. Right. It's about holding it in my hand.
You always call it your own library, right?
Yeah, it's a library. It's like,
I like having books, having that access to it readily at hand, literally readily at hand, has always been something for me. And it's also, I think it depends on the individual, but for me, like I always wanted to collect something. Early on in my life, I wanted to collect comic books, but I never really did until much later on in life. I wanted to collect books, and I did that early on and still do to this day. But then collecting movies, there was just something about being able to go to the movie theater, and then later on, I can revisit that movie again at home. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's probably how they sold the whole idea of the home video market, really. It's like, hey, that movie you just saw in the theater, you can now see it in the comfort of your own home. Right. There's that aspect. And to me, it's also become kind of a source of pride, if you will. Maybe there's a little ego behind it, was the idea that, hey, look at all of my things. Look at my new shiny things. Like,
I've got this one thing that
it's like look at me. I've got oh, you want to watch this movie? I've got it. You want all that stuff. And then it's actually also become like beneficial, because stuff I bought years ago is coming back, is now being useful now. Like, I've got the seasons of Robot Chicken that you worked on. Yeah. So it's like, hey, I never thought I would meet, you or, Chris McKay, but I've got his work, if that means anything. So that's kind of a source of pride. Also, I also like seeing the evolution of things, because you really do see it. The home video market even from the year 2000 to now is vastly different. Yeah. I mean, it's morphing and changing all the time. New qualities, new formats, new technology, all that kind of stuff. And it's, like I said, also being able to curate what you would like to watch is also something I think, goes into it as well. If I want a movie, I can own it. And, we talk about this all the time. Streaming isn't the most reliable thing. And I think we're seeing it now. Yeah. There's a shift right now in streaming. We saw this boom over the last several years, and now we're seeing it kind of come back down a little bit, where we're seeing companies not invest as much anymore in new material, or keep old material, or even keep old material around. We're seeing it, where certain things are leaving formats, moving to other formats, or just disappearing in general. So it's like they sold us on the idea that, hey, streaming, it's at your fingertips. well, maybe it's not. Maybe we can
So
take this away from you.
So yeah,
They
so it's the I
really
think another thing is that sense of ownership.
that too.
We want to feel safe that we have these things and they're with us, and so it's I think that's a lot of it too.
And yeah, that brings us to the Tomorrow War, where
Mm.
what happens if Amazon? Not going to happen, but if Amazon goes under, I won't have access to be able to watch that movie.
Yeah, where's Tomorrow War? Where do I get that now?
Yeah.
It's so it's kind of like
You have a copy that you can burn us?
yeah. I'll just
Yeah, I wish I did. I mean, I
probably
wish
has
I
the
had a
film print.
physical copy of it. I mean, that we were very at the time, we had made this movie and we the pandemic wasn't over when we were finishing it up, and so they basically had to make a choice as to whether or not they're going to hold and try to do like some sort of theatrical release or try to find a streamer that wanted to buy it. And fortunately, Amazon came along and bought the movie. But it does, I've seen that movie. I got to see that movie in a theater like several times during when we previewed it, and then which was still rough and the visual effects weren't done. And then when I finally did the QC, like I did today on Renfield, where I got to go into a room that is basically the size of a real theater with this real giant screen and amazing sound, and get to see that movie. And that movie, I'm glad that it got on Amazon, and I'm glad that it played really well, and those guys were really happy with it, and it played around the world, and it's still one of the number one, if not. You never know exactly what to believe from anybody,
right?
But they do say that it's still like if not one of the, not the top, but one of the top movies on Amazon still to this day.
That's great.
But it is a movie that was designed to play in a movie theater, and it was a movie that was big and epic, and with and it plays really well in a theater experience. I mean, and that's hard to replicate. I mean, even I'm sure you guys have a nice setup at home to watch movies and all that kind of thing, and I do too. But it's not the same thing because there is that communal aspect.
Yeah, yeah. We talked about it earlier. It plays an important factor that I think people take for granted. And
I also think some movies are specifically designed to play on a large screen. Some movies are shot in IMAX cameras to specifically show in IMAX theaters. So like you can't really replicate that at home unless
or
you
a comedy. Just doing something where it's meant to be funny. That's meant to be a room full of people laughing. That's
it becomes contagious. Yeah,
even for that,
Yeah, and even dramatic movies or horror films, like people get silent. Rare when you got good audience members, of course, nowadays. But when a tense moment happens in a good movie, people get quiet and you notice it. You're like, wow, so that's good stuff. But I do want to our last little bit here. I want to make it back around to your new film, Renfield. Nicolas Cage. Okay.
Yeah,
I got to know, how was it working? How was it working with my favorite actor of all time?
Cage is brilliant. He is a lot of fun. He loves making movies. You couldn't ask for a more joyous person to be around, because he really is having fun every minute and just wants to do the work. Loved obviously playing Dracula and being able to follow the footsteps of his Christopher Lee, who's one of his idols, and obviously Bela Lugosi and other people too. But Christopher Lee is a big influence on him, and I guess on Season of the Witch he got to work with Christopher Lee for a little bit, and really inspired by him. But those movies, those Hammer movies, were the Dracula movies for him when he was growing up. And the thing he says, besides California Kinski, the thing that he says on set, the atmosphere of what we were doing is, he's like, this is what I always. He said something to the effect of, this is what I always try to work on movies that feel like this, where it feels like that Super 8 feeling. The way that it felt when he was making movies with his friends and his cousins and things like that, when they was making movies in their backyard, and he likes that. He wants to just have it feel like that, to feel that kind of that kind of freedom, that it's creativity, fast moving energy, like no shame, just no rules, like try things, that sort of thing. Like that's something he really responds to and really liked about the process. And I think that, and his favorite movies that he's enjoyed working on, it sort of feels like that, so yeah, he is a really, it's funny because you don't know what to expect. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. You sort of see these people, I've been a Nick Cage fan since Birdie, and so, but you don't really know what to expect. You just, you sort of just know them, via whatever, interviews and stuff like that. And he couldn't have been more like just gung ho and collaborative and willing to try anything. And he's excited about movies, and he has just a real deep knowledge about performances and actors and characters, and he can stay with you on references. A lot of people sometimes fall off, and he sees a lot of movies. He watches everything.
Yeah, I've seen him in interviews bring up tons of obscure films, just classic films, and just I love when I see people in film show their love for film. That's I think that's lost on a lot of people in the industry.
I feel like you don't expect it. Like you don't expect people within the industry to be so in love with it because they're in it so much. You know what I mean? So it's like this must be natural to them, but no, there's a real grounded appreciation for the love of movies for many people who work in it, not only actors and actresses, but people like you, Chris, and other directors and editors and all that kind of stuff. The bedrock of it all that I think we've discovered when we've interviewed anyone is the love of movies. That's where it all starts, and that passion continues on and even grows as people get older and get more and more involved in it in whatever facet. But it's like kind of like you said, Steven, I wouldn't expect that, but yet it makes a heck of a lot of sense.
Well, I mean, but it's just that not everybody shows it. I think a lot of people have it, but you don't see a lot of these stars talking about it in interviews, bringing up, Nicolas Cage bringing up, French films, or bringing up there's just not that, that's not happening in interviews. It's always about something about fashion or something, something about, just something that's kind of like about something that's not about movies in general. It's
usually just generic talking points.
It's some generic talking points. And I love seeing when actors and filmmakers and things really show their passion for the thing that they work in, and not just that it's a business and that they're trying to get to the next movie, and that they're, I love like what you're doing, like our conversation, Chris, you're showing why you do this, and why I think you're good at it is because you are very invested, and it's not just a job for you. So
I'd do it for free if I could do it for the rest of my life, because it's the most fun thing. I mean, I'm very lucky. I'm very, very lucky that I get to do what I do.
Yeah. And I did see that Renfield is opening at the Overlook Festival on the 30th. So, and that's of course in New Orleans where you guys shot. So that's a pretty cool thing for the people that were there.
We're really fortunate that was all kind of coincided at the right time, and that the film festival allowed us to sort of, be their opening film and stuff like that. Yeah. And I think Cage and I are going to be there for opening night. So that's going to be exciting.
That's fantastic, man. It's going to be a great treat for everybody there. And everybody, at the beginning of this, we talked a little bit about what Renfield is about. Quick, what's the pitch? Why should people go see Renfield on April 14th in theaters?
Yeah, because it's I mean, for me selfishly, it's I like movies that take swings and try things. It's not a cookie cutter Dracula movie. It's a movie about a toxic narcissist. It's a movie about codependency. It's a movie about the boss from hell, and we can all relate to bad bosses, bad boyfriends, bad girlfriends, all that kind of thing, you know, that and Renfield, and Nick Hoult is a brilliant Renfield. He's a guy who, you know, has this terrible boss, and meets Aquafina's character, who's a pretty, you know, hard-edged cop, and realizes he needs to stand up to his boss, and goes to a Codependence Anonymous meeting, and tries to figure out how he can leave Dracula. So that's
as good of a pitch as I ever heard.
It's good as, yeah, dude. You had me, and then we didn't talk much about Aquafina. She's hilarious. I love what she does, and I'm so excited to see this film, Renfield, coming out April 14th in theaters. Chris, this has been great. This has been a great conversation. Great talking with you.
Good talking to you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope you had a good time, and I hope everything is successful for this film, and maybe we'll see a Renfield too.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you never know. You never know.
Or you're going to direct like the cinematic universe movie with all these new characters versions. You know,
whatever comes along.
Can't wait.
I think Chris just said it. He'll do anything.
He'll do anything. Yeah. He loves it. But Chris, have a good rest of your night. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Talk soon.